Trump took a super L Friday when the Supreme Court ruled that most of his tariffs were illegal. This is super embarrassing. First of all, the Supreme Court got 6 conservatives on the court and only 3 liberals. That means that, at least 3 conservatives and even conservatives that he put on the court disagree with him. So after getting neutered by the Supreme Court, he had a press conference in which he attempted to look strong. That was just pathetic. And we can see he did not take this ruling well. Let's watch a little bit of this crash out.
The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed. The Democrats on the court are thrilled, but they will automatically vote no. They're an automatic no, just like in Congress, they're an automatic no.
First of all, people on the court that he appointed also said no. Like, what is he talking about? If it was only Democratic appointed justices, he would have won 6-3. And instead, he lost 3-6. What is he talking about? Hey, just salty and, like I said, embarrassing. And here's the thing. The Supreme Court ruling is 100 times worse than most people even realize. I want to pause for a second and ask everybody to take a second, subscribe to my YouTube page, and sign up for my email list. Those are the best ways to stay in the loop on all things politics with Steve. And without further ado, let's get back to it. This tariff ruling should not be a surprise to anybody. If you just listen to the oral arguments, clearly the Supreme Court had an issue with the president just by himself imposing tariffs on Americans, without the approval of Congress. And that is exactly what a lot of us on the left been saying. Tariffs are a tax on the American people. He was only able to trick people because tariffs are taxes on American people, but you don't pay them to the IRS. So you don't really think of them as taxes. You pay them when you buying energy or when you going to the grocery store, when you buying clothes, you paying an increased cost. But that's basically just the government instructing a private business to take your money. So ultimately, the money ends up in the account of the government, just like a tax. It's just taking a different route there. And I think that's what confused a lot of people. So this ruling basically guarantees that all of these promises that Trump made to people based on, collecting all of this tariff revenue will not happen. All those rebate checks he promised, other things, because here's the thing, he collected that money illegally. And that's on him. He should be held accountable politically. Republicans in Congress that let this happen should be held accountable politically, because it's a president's responsibility to understand the limitations of the president, and you got to work within them. You promise people all of these things based on powers that you just didn't have. And look, the most obvious consequence of these tariffs for the Trump administration is calls for refunds, right? I mean, immediately following this ruling, companies are lining up to pursue legal action to receive the funds that basically it was collected from them illegally. And as I predicted, the Trump administration is now lying about the amount of money the government collected. This is funny. I told y'all this would happen. Trump been rage posting all day because Wednesday the Supreme Court is likely to strike down his tariffs. Now, this is going to be crazy because the U.S. government is going to be on a hook to pay back all of the money that it collected from these companies. Trump will finally have to stop lying about how much money the government been collecting. He going to be happy that they ain't collect nearly as much money as he said. His administration may go up in flames after this.
But what about the revenue you've already collected? What about the $175 billion? Do you anticipate having to make refunds at Treasury?
I think it's probably not 175. I think it's probably closer to 130, but still a substantial amount.
And look, if these refunds are paid out, the refunds will be sent directly back to the companies that paid the tariffs. And now those companies will have the additional revenue that they collected from the customers that they thought that they had to pay the government. And now they just get to keep that tariffs. I don't really know if it's a way for the private companies to refund people tariff revenue. Luckily, we got Democratic governors that's fighting for consumers, that's fighting for us to receive refunds from the federal government, because there's all sort of studies that show consumers pay for the bulk of these tariffs. Now, within that same rambly press conference where he whined about the Supreme Court ruling, he also teased the fact that he had other options and specifically was floating around in Section 122 tariffs. Here's the thing, those will get slapped down too.
But other alternatives will now be used to replace the ones that the court incorrectly rejected. We have alternatives. The Trade Act of 1974, Sections 122, 201, 301. Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122 over and above our normal tariffs already being charged.
And this is the thing about tariff authority. The Constitution gives it to the president under certain situations. And for the most part, imposing sweeping tariffs is basically a tax. So you need Congress to do that. He can say whatever he wants right now, but the way that those Section 122 tariffs work, even if he was able to implement that, it would only be for a 150-day period max. And those tariffs could only be a maximum of 15%. But this is the thing. Section 122 only allows a president to impose tariffs based on a balance of payment deficit, which is not the same thing as a trade deficit. So thinking about a trade deficit in simplest terms, we just looking at the amount of trade between two countries, and the country that has the least amount of trade has a deficit, and then the amount of that deficit is what we call the trade deficit, right? Well, Section 122, as I mentioned, is not a trade deficit. It's a balance of payment deficit. Now, the balance of payment deficit includes a lot of different things, but I'll say mostly it's about the money flowing in and out. That would be very difficult for Trump to be able to prove. And that's why I believe it's just a matter of time before these tariffs get slapped down too. And even a worse consequence than that, I believe that the ruling on these tariffs will invalidate all of these agreements signed with tariff rates being basically a condition or a factor in these agreements. I mean, I'm thinking about peace agreements, business deals, some foreign investment deals. I know Trump is thinking about this. In his rambly press conference, he claimed that, he used these tariffs to solve 5 of 8 wars.
Tariffs have likewise been used to end 5 of the 8 wars that I settled. I settled 8 wars, whether you like it or not.
I know that Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, is thinking about this because he knows, regardless of what he say, the leverage that you use to pressure people into these trade deals or any sort of deals was illegal.
These trade deals that you and Jameson Greer and President Trump have negotiated, say with the UK, say with the European Union, that were done in part with leverage from the tariffs. And for that matter, the peace deals as well to solve these wars. Are those deals under any kind of threat now? Do you think everyone will honor the deals even though now supposedly the tariffs have been done asunder by the Supreme Court?
Well, again, we can move to 232 and 301 tariffs, so I think that everyone is going to honor their deal.
Again, clearly the administration is worried about this and they are aware of it. I mean, just imagine if you was a country that signed a peace agreement based on not wanting to be charged, let's say, a 50% tariff. Well, now that those tariffs are illegal, what's bounding you to that peace agreement? Those deals will clearly be ripped up, and that is a foreign policy disaster for Trump. This Supreme Court ruling wrecked him.